Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hello, everybody. MiOsc is back at sea. Join us for an evening conversation as we try to keep our thoughts concise amidst our most recent cruise. Oscar and I discussed the difference between optimal versus ideal. Should we be adding or shedding actions to improve? And are we really living in reality? I'm not quite sure. But in any case, join us as we have another conversation while we are traveling. And thanks for hanging in there with us, especially to you patrons. Shout out to you guys. If you enjoy this podcast, please rate it on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. Plus, I've been doing extra blog posts and behind the scenes footage for our patrons only. So join and you can get all of that exclusive content. And you don't have to be a monthly subscriber. You can just pick and choose what content you want to read. So check it out. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Oscar.
Hello, Mimi.
We're on our cruise ship and we just wrapped up our evening chic formal night on the cruise, and I didn't want to open the blinds because I figured it would just be a reflection and you'd see this really ridiculous camera setup we have. That's a look a bit ghetto, but I like it. We've got an attachment for your phone clipped onto the side table on top of the bed with books kind of rigged under it to keep it level. So we just kept the screen down since, people know we're in the middle of the ocean. Plus it's dark. It's like blackness.
Can't see anything out there.
Yeah, it's dark out. So anyways, end of the evening, hence our sort of formal attire.
You kept yours.
I was told I looked very girly tonight.
You do.
And then the waitress was like, "Oh, does your dress have pockets?" I love that. I was like, "Yes, it does have pockets." Bonus. Yeah. I mean, you always have pockets, so it's not as novel.
Well, I like putting my hands in my pockets.
So I'm also having shout out to Erica, who does these amazing lashes, but it's at the tail end of it, and so now my lashes are going to look a bit rogue and they're rebelling on me. And so if I blink a lot, it's because they're growing out into multiple directions. And so while they still look very nice, they're at the tail end of its moment.
They do look nice, though.
But yes, so thank you to Erica, my student, who's very gifted at lash enhancements. Extensions? I don't really know, but I'll tag her. You can check it out. Anyways, we are once again podcasting from the Caribbean Sea. We're at the end of the trip. We normally actually get one recorded much earlier, but this has been kind of a busy week.
Has it been busy? So schedule our breakfast, lunch, nap, dinner.
Okay.
Shows.
I think maybe one nap in the entire week. That's not really very nappy. That's not very reflective of our schedule. To be fair, most of the time I feel like I've been hurting and hanging out with the Chan fam, which is Energizer Bunny 1, 2, and 3. One being Grandmaster Chan, as many of you know. So it's always enjoyable, though. We're really fortunate to be able to spend time with our family away on these retreats. I've been sort of dropping in some stories when I try to get on some internets of us doing training in the morning, and it's really reminiscent of some of those longer Chan fam trips we've taken like over 10 years ago, where it was like 28 days at sea, which we cannot do anymore, but we'd really get a lot of training in. And so it's nice to have like bits of that and to be able to do Tai Chi and Kung Fu at sea. Maybe not as aggressively as 10 years ago, but it's still pretty cool to be able to have kind of a Chan fam retreat still.
It's a pleasure. Why are you laughing?
Because you're funny. As I've said, it's the end of the night, so if we're a little bit loopy, you'll know why. But I think in the past we used to try to get this really nice like Caribbean Sea shot and then like boats would keep passing by, and there'd be like window washers and noise, and I'm like, why haven't we ever thought about podcasting at night? This is the first time we've done this, and we've got this like kind of great setup and lighting, and I think it's like a little podcast studio. It's quite nice. Cruise podcast studio. I like it.
I like it as well.
All right. What are we talking about today, Oscar?
What's funny is that when we do podcasts like this,
Like what?
Like whenever you say we're about to do a podcast, you're like, what are we talking about? And I'm like, can we talk about what we're going to talk about?
We're going to talk about it now, obviously.
All right. So there are notes that I take when I hear something, and then I read it out, and then you can probably vamp for an hour on it. Here we go.
Okay. Let's take a poll from our listeners. During these podcasts, who talks more? All right. They're going to vote.
Pausing for the poll.
Well, this isn't live, but so of course now in this one, watch, I'm going to talk a lot, but I want you to go back to all the MiOsc episodes and let me know. All right.
From one of my favorite writers and podcasters, Adam Grant, he wrote that there's a difference between the spotlight effect and not a difference. He explained what the spotlight effect was, and he explained what the overblown implications effect is. The spotlight effect. People are not paying as much attention to you as you think they are. This one I think makes a lot of sense to me, because I always say no one really cares about you, right?
Yes, you always say that.
Right?
Especially to children.
Yes. And then the overblown implications effect. People judge your competence much more by your successes than your failures. So the point is that can be kind of liberating, because it says, one, as a spotlight effect, no one's actually judging you that much. And two, overblown implications effect, no one is actually judging you that much if you screw up or try something new. And he added, the thing is that people who judge you probably are not doing anything. And anybody who has done anything real, or maybe, I were to think about anything that's challenging or hard, they're not going to judge you harshly because they've also fallen and gotten up. So that is the jumping off point. Go ahead, proceed.
Well, Oscar. Well, there's a few things that come to mind, obviously. So spotlight effect being that I do feel like I'm being judged all the time, especially by you. Just kidding. No, I definitely feel like your upbringing can make a difference in your, I guess, impression or interpretation of spotlight effect, right? Because to me, being from an Asian American household, particularly mine with a Kung Fu master and Tai Chi master and business owners and just kind of our family dynamic, I think I always was feeling like there was a lot of judgment in terms of like measurements of where I'm at, what am I doing, comparatives to other people, kids in China that train 12 hours a day and, get beaten 10 hours a day or something. And like, oh, this, so I feel like that can play into the spotlight effect, is your upbringing.
I think so also.
And your environment.
Yes. But my thought is, okay, I think I was the opposite, right? Where
nobody cared.
Not that nobody cared.
In a house of 4 boys, 1 year apart, 2 of the last ones being twins.
Well, it's more like
It's
who's
like a
got to
mom.
go to the hospital this week, right? But I don't know where it first came to that idea of like, no one really cares about you. People really care about themselves. So even to your point, spotlight being put on you, you feel that as a child. But the truth is that whoever's putting the spotlight on you to make you feel that way, it's because they are afraid of how people will perceive them. So if it's your parents, they probably were more like,
Don't embarrass me.
Right. It's more about them than about you. As a child, you don't know the difference. You just feel the pressure and the spotlight. But the truth is, they're not even really thinking about you. They care way more about how other people perceive them as parents, because to my point again, people just really care about themselves.
Okay, end of podcast.
That's just how I feel.
I don't disagree with this because I do feel that we all internalize so much that in essence, we constantly have a fear of being judged. We constantly have a fear of failure. And therefore, a lot of people don't want to try things, right? Or they are, especially as we are teachers and in this next generation, we've noticed that, wow, a lot of kids don't even want to answer because they're afraid they're going to answer incorrectly. And we just want them to answer, to have an opinion and to kind of critically think, or just to actually emote, verbally, communicate with us. So, but I do feel that, yes, even though, for example, I'm using myself as an example because it is what I know best, but my upbringing being like, yes, of course, it was a reflection on my parents, right? How I did Kung Fu or how I did in school, etc. right? Like, yes, that is true, but my perception is also my reality. So therefore, I do feel like you're put in the spotlight, so you're being judged. But to be fair, it isn't even just external, right? It's more of like expectation, maybe, I guess, is kind of where I'm going with that. Like, I don't disagree that there's a lot of external factors, and it's more of like how they're perceived or how people perceive you, in terms of your achievements and your successes or failures. But I do think that it is fair to say that there are times where the feelings are much higher of you being judged and it's not actually true. But there are also times where, you're being judged, because I think we can be pretty judgy.
Yeah. I think I'm probably, to use what young people say, low key.
Low key judgy.
I'm probably
actually, to be fair, that's not a young people thing. Like, I think we said low key when we were young. We're just bringing it back.
I think I'm probably low key the most judgy person on the planet.
Are you low key though about it?
I'm admitting it. Spotlight effect. You think things are about you, where I think the point is that really the thing is about them.
Okay, that's the 100%.
To your point, the overblown implication effect is that you think then that they're also judging you on things that you're doing incorrectly. Whereas parents really do love their children, and I think almost any parent just wants to see their child happy. So the reason that you feel the way you feel comes to what you said, which is expectations, which I think can also be said as communication. And this lack of skills that we all have in communication leads to this misunderstanding.
Interesting. Okay, so in terms of the spotlight effect, and because we often talk a lot about martial arts, we often talk about our training, you have clients, you have students, when we think about that in terms of education, for example, whether it's in Kung Fu or other areas, like, this is kind of important because I feel like this does lead to a bit of the problem we're having right now in terms of, like, when we go to try to teach people, like, their hesitance to try to do something out of their comfort zone, would you say?
Yes, and I think what they need to realize, to keep going back with the terminology that we started with, is number one, take yourself as a student and you have this hesitancy. Number one, no other student cares about you. They only are caring about themselves. And then number two, the instructors or the teachers are going to celebrate your wins, and they're going to remember you more for those good things that you're doing than by you making a mistake. The fact that you're just out there doing it, this could be training, this could be in competition. There's something else that I read once that said the person in a fight, the winner and the loser, have more in common than anyone else in the arena because they are actually in it and they're doing it. So in martial arts, when someone does something and maybe you as a person who did it said, man, I just did something wrong, or I messed up this move, or I lost a fight, or I lost this competition, you will not be seen harshly towards that. You'll be seen much more towards the positive side. You actually went and competed. You improved. All those things. And that's what I think. I think those are where the two main points are. Number one, that spotlight effect of no one's really paying that much attention to you. And number two, the overblown implications effect, which is you think anything that you do wrong, everyone's going to remember that. And the truth is that what people judge you more and what they celebrate more, what they remember more, is your successes or the fact that you're actually trying.
Yeah, and I think the word success and achievement get very misinterpreted as well, right? Like, one is only successful if they won first place. One is only achieving something if they've mastered a movement and they can wow the audience, or they're doing something extremely impressive. And, I think in our style in particular, in the Wallom Kung Fu style, we have a little bit of a high bar, right? Because Grandmaster Chan is not normal. He is such an outlier that I feel like many of us in the system feel like failures because of the fact he is so kind of out of this world. I mean, when we think about his physicality, I mean, literally just yesterday, like, he's in his upper 80s, and it's just like the way he runs up and down the stairs, the way he does things, and it's because his leg strength over these 8 decades, it's still there, even though he has definitely atrophied. There's definitely age. He's not jumping down from the top of 8 stairs now, like it's just 2 or whatever. But the thing is, it's like we look around at the rest of the 80 somethings and they're not doing that. And so we have this bar and we have this kind of ideal that it's like, wow, if we're not doing it like Grandmaster Chan, then it's not being done correct. So I think we have a false sense of what success and achievement is in terms of martial arts. But just to kind of bring us into where we're at right today, we're in a cruise ship, and I typically get pretty embarrassed about not being able to speak every language fluently or perfectly, and it makes me just kind of shy away. But when I'm on a cruise ship, for some reason, I feel very, very comfortable just throwing out everything from like Zulu to Nabele to Spanish to French to like Chinese. Like, I literally love the international staff crew that's on here. What did they say? 45? No, 70 something countries are represented. Oh man, it was under 100, but it was in the upper like 70, 80. Like, there was so many different countries represented, and so I make it a point to try to say hello, thank you, those kind of things, and Tagalog and Indonesian. And so it makes me feel like a bit of a polyglot. And to your point is, none of them laugh at me when I pronounce things incorrectly, or when I say good morning instead of hello, or thank you instead of hello, because in Africa, there's so many different dialects. And so they're just like celebrating the fact that I'm trying and that I actually do know a few words. They're like, how long did you live there? And I'm like, a week. They're so thrilled and like moved by that. And so to your point, if we take this example and kind of magnify that or spread that across kind of every scenario, like, obviously, yes, if you're at least trying, and you're trying with real intent and honest effort versus just like kind of throwaway like Kung Fu or Tai Chi, and if you're like really giving it a go, like, there's a lot of respect for that. Because when we talk about Wallom in particular, I always go, hey guys, Kung Fu is hard work. It means hard work. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? If Kung Fu were easy, everyone would be doing it. And it's just not. And we're in this really weird era where I'm seeing robot Kung Fu, in the Chinese New Year stage. And it's not impressive to me at all. Like, it's impressive in terms of technology, but in terms of the martial thing, it's like, yes, it's a robot and it's doing flips and all of that. And I guess there's something to that. But like, for me, that like human artistic intention, the expression that a real human can bring to it, and just thinking about my dad and how he embodies all the elements, all the spirit and all of that, it's just it's tough to capture that. I mean, until they're like Cylons and they look like us, but I don't think I'll be around for that.
You never know.
Yeah, that's true. You never know. It's going pretty fast. But what I'm saying is, like, yes, we have the high bar, and then we have our kind of misconception of what a success and what an achievement and what a failure is.
Yeah, I think you do a good job of trying to greet people in their native language, from like all those languages, Indonesian, Filipino, and all that. And then we talked to, there was a gentleman who was from Zimbabwe, and really just trying. Really what happened was he's got this huge smile. And what happens always, especially with the African countries, is they always say, "Where did you learn my language?"
Yeah,
right?
they're like super excited.
With a big smile.
Yeah.
So that is actually a perfect explanation of the overblown implications effect, which is a lot of people, myself included, always, when you're practicing a new language, are like worried about making mistakes. But to the person that you're making that effort to, they only see the success. They only are seeing the good part of it. Like, wow, you're actually trying to make a connection. So that's pretty impressive. And then as far as the ideal goes out, that's a recent newsletter that I wrote to our students, it was titled "Stop Comparing with Your Ideal." And of course, always my thought with that is always Grandmaster Chan is like the ideal, especially for the Wallem Kung Fu system, right? Because he's the guy who brought it to the United States. But the problem with, and I think this happened to me in the beginning, and after sending out that newsletter, a lot of students wrote back and go, "Oh, thanks for this reminder," because no matter what the sport is, we're using Wallem Kung Fu, right? So Master Chan is kind of the ideal, but in basketball, people are comparing themselves to Michael Jordan, or
right.
in sprinting to Usain Bolt, right? So the trap with that, with you trying to be competing with your ideal, is that it has to do more with a comparison as opposed to you thinking about yourself, like, how can I be more optimal for myself? So the point I was trying to make with that blog post is the words we use, like, I'm trying to be like my ideal, or more, I can use them as a inspiration. So your father, of course, for Kung Fu, your mother for Tai Chi, you, another instructor, Sifu at the temple, are inspirations for me, inspire me to be better, but I can't compete with them. And a point that I used was someone who I think Kung Fu is at a really high level, Sifu at the temple. When we're sitting down next to each other, we're the same height, but he's like 5 feet tall.
Right.
And I'm 5'9". So that alone tells you, okay, look, totally different body types. So how am I going to compare myself to that, right?
He's meant to be in those low stances.
He's meant to be in those low stances. He started when he was like 10 years old. He had full splits, right, all the time. I do not have this full splits, right? I have
yet.
But I mean, like, my legs are like spider legs, right? With a short torso. So I'm going to just look different. And so when it comes to your own personal training, you get kind of full circle with the spotlight effect, the overblown implications effect, the ideal, the optimal is you should just be comparing yourself to, well, what can my best self, my optimal self be today? Not even like, and this is again, another mistake that I made, my optimal self 5 years from now. No. You should be like, the stress that I've had, the sleep that I had last night, what I ate, how I'm feeling, everything that's going on, what can I do to be the best that I can today? So that's kind of the idea between the differences between your ideal and your optimal.
What's very interesting is, of course, there's like Grandmaster Chan, and I think some of us are so grounded in reality that we don't even try to be like Grandmaster Chan. I mean, literally, I've been archiving footage. And by the way, if you're a patron, stay subscribed. You're going to start getting some really cool archive footage of Grandmaster Chan, because I've been archiving a lot of stuff that wasn't even in Pre-Chain Kung Fu Pioneer. And we just watched him like in his 60s running up and down the plum-flower poles and then jumping off of them, which are like 10 feet high or something. And just like at that age in his 60s doing that with ease, and just, so sometimes even he's like not even your ideal. But one thing we fall, or personally anyway, I have sometimes a bit of a pitfall, like I have to kind of do that. What is my optimal today? Because we also get caught up in our ideal earlier self. Like, I used to be able to do this, right? Because somebody said to me just recently, oh, well, but I used to be able to do this. I go, yeah, well, I used to be able to jump off buildings and doing butterfly twists down onto a mat from the second, from a stairwell for stunt work. I used to do flips off of boxes, and I used to do a lot of things that I do not do now. So I think we also get very caught up in our ideal former selves, like what we ideally want to maybe nostalgically be like, or what we ideally want to get back to. And I think it's okay to try to obtain a skill set that you once had, but just having that kind of expectation that your optimal self today and being comfortable with that is very, very difficult for a lot of athletes that were like longtime athletes, or people like myself who've been doing martial arts since they were like 2 years old, right? Like my whole life. And so it's very frustrating when you have an injury. You have coming on 40 fit Fu is now moving into 50 fit Fu, right? Like our timeline is changing, our bodies are changing. And so there becomes a dynamic where it's not even about, I want to be as great as a Grandmaster Chan and fly off of buildings. It's more of like, wow, I would just be love to be able to get back to my former self, where it's like having to kind of align and just kind of reset my expectations of like, what does this mean for me today? And that goes across the board for me, mentally, physically, like just, I don't know if spiritually is the right word, but like just kind of in that mindset.
Yeah. The terminology, like I think it's interchangeable, but I mean, for the sake of that writing that I did for the blog post, I put differentiate yourself between ideal and optimal. So ideal being it's an external comparison, which can be detrimental because, again, I use it as inspiration, but I'm trying to not compare to that.
Yeah.
And then optimal is more an internal competition, which I'm okay with as long as I'm realistic. So to your point, there was a video you were showing, and I did like a double jump toe kick, and I was like, wow, that was really high. And now I got like Achilles tendinopathy. You know, I got to warm up to do any kind of jumping. So I can think back to that, my optimal self in my 20s, being able to jump much higher, and I can compete with that and say, where can I get, can I move in that direction? But that's not me competing with anything externally, right? That's not comparing to anything externally. I'm competing maybe with my former self to try to get better, but then I'll have to live in reality and know that as you get older, there's only one direction that we're going. It just depends on how slowly we can get there, right?
There's only one direction. Gravity will win.
And death. But internal competition with your optimal self, you can do that on a day-to-day basis. But then the thing that we need to take into account is taking into account all those factors that are happening in our lives. And so there is a trap also with being like, let me be my optimal self and thinking and not living in reality, not taking into account.
Reality is unfortunately where we need to live in.
Yeah.
Except when you're listening to fantasy books or reading fantasy books, like you can have a moment. And I think it's safe to say we should also allow ourselves that break.
Yeah, absolutely.
A little break from reality. But when it comes to training, we do need to live in reality because that can often lead to injury.
Yeah.
If we're not realistic.
Yeah. So, I mean, it comes down to, I think, just from both of those points we talked about, spotlight effect, the overblown implications effect, comparing yourself to an ideal or competing with your optimal self, all of it is just this kind of shift in mindset where being grounded in reality is a great place to start.
Real.
Being grounded in reality. So, I think a mistake that I've made, but you look back and you go, these are all the things that I did, and I wish I did some things differently. But if you're happy with the person you are, you can't complain too much. But is me looking at people that inspired me and then trying to compare myself to that ideal, and then being, oh, here's another thing and going there, and then here's another thing and going there. And so that's another personal challenge of mine of
his learning ADD, fitness and ADD. Kung Fu learning ADD.
And
he wants to just learn it.
Yeah. And so then the following blog post that I wrote was like, what's more important? Like, do you need to add something to be better, or do you need to shed something to be better? I can tell you for myself, I need to shed a lot of different things.
Like a snake.
Yeah. Well, so in the beginning, maybe when you're younger, when you're first starting out things, you need to add different things.
Okay.
Right? But at a certain point, when you realize like what you want to do, you probably got to go, well, this is what I want to do. I need to eliminate all these other things that are just distractions. And that is actually very hard for me.
So this is interesting because we're talking about optimal self, ideal self, and all these things, and like, I think it's probably very obvious, more obvious in something like strength training than even martial arts, and like, because you can get very stronger internally actually as you get older, right? So there's just like all these other kind of dynamics, but like for strength training, you're like, I could lift this weight at this age, and now at this age I do this weight or whatever it is, right? Like, I feel like there's an easier measuring tool stick kind of thing, whereas kung fu, there's just so much variance and movement, understanding, application, going deeper in the philosophical side, whereas like for you, you're talking about shedding things, right? But it's like you do still always kind of come back to a baseline, like you've mentioned. If you could kind of maintain something as you get older, then that's actually gains. So I'm not saying that right, but
so with strength training specifically, and you can use your dad as an example with what you were talking about his leg strength, right? Mm-hmm. Our age, late 40s.
late
40s. There probably is I guess I'm going to use the word, an ideal strength that we can have, mm-hmm. or maybe an optimal strength for ourselves that we can have. And let's say you want to be at late 40s, 47, 48 years old, your most optimal self, the elite level of strength at that level. There is no way that at 47, the strength that you can have at the elite level, you will have it when you're 80. It's not going to be possible. But if you try to be at the elite level that you can, whatever you can safely get to at 47, then when you're 80, you will have a drop off, but it won't be as drastic as most people. So what happens with most people, and you and I can attest to this, is you stop moving as much as you used to, right? And things get harder. Things get harder because you're aging, period, but also because we stop doing stuff. So I think if we can try to continue to push ourselves to be as strong as we possibly can at every age, we're not going to get stronger. We're only going to get weaker. But it can be, instead of falling off of a cliff, it could be paragliding, Either way.
I keep trying to bring this podcast back up in like happier moments, and this guy keeps taking us to death. No, I'm just kidding.
We're all going to get there. But here's what I do want is actually.
But we're going to paraglide there, guys.
Okay. What would be ideal? Let's say we get
very ideal podcast. This is going to be named The Ideal. Go on.
Let's say I was able to make it to 90 years old.
Wow. Okay.
That'd be great. Who knows if we'll make it there? I would like, when I hit 90, if that's my time, I want to fall off the cliff at that point. I don't want to then start paragliding.
Right. You just want a nice, clean.
From now, 47 to 90, I want to glide there. Boom. Then I've met my end, 90. Okay, now I want to fall off the cliff.
You want me to just push you at that point? If I'm around to do so.
My...
Don't worry, I will hire, if I'm not around, I will hire the robot nurse that's taking care of us and program it to do what it's got to do.
Yeah. So, I don't know how we got to this, because this is inevitably where I go every time I think of anything.
So we're on this cruise, and there's this comedian, and normally the comedians, no offense, cruise comedians, but they're usually pretty corny and it's the same jokes and whatever. But this lady was actually quite good. She's
probably because she's from Boston.
Is she from Boston?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She said she's from Boston. She said she's from Boston, mm-hmm. is where she started, mm-hmm. and then in Miami as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Latina.
Yeah,
she's a little spicy. Well, what I liked was she said something about, in women's brains, there's like 15. You say one sentence and 15, thoughts pop up. And with a guy that's like, nothing's happening. They don't care. They just don't care. And I'm like, wow, she's got your number, Oscar. You just don't care. But also, like, just the way we process is so different. But I think that you're right. When we do meet our end, we want it to be painless. We want it to be peaceful. We want it to just be over and not this long drawn out thing, like obviously. And it's been interesting because we've lost a lot of people at the beginning of this year, and most of them well into their, sunset years, or, 80s, 90s, like they've lived a long life. And so, but we do see two different ways. Like we see where people are like, wow, this was great. They just were able to kind of go after a few days. And then we've seen it like drag on and on and on. And we definitely don't want that. So, but in any case, back to optimal and ideal. So optimal, ideally, we'll have a nice peaceful death.
The three main points we had today. We did the spotlight effect. Overblown implications effect. That was the first thing.
Okay.
Don't compare yourself to the ideal. Better to be competing with yourself, your optimal self, on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And number 3, do you need to shed something or do you need to add something?
Okay, we didn't really explore that too much. We jumped to death somehow. But yes, so what would you say for me?
I think you need to shed. You need to shed a lot. And you need to be okay with it. And be like, it's okay not to do this thing.
Some would call me an overachiever. This is Women's History Month, by the way. So that's been kind of prevalent on this cruise ship as well. And it's interesting because it's like, women, achievements in XYZ, as a woman, you've achieved blah, 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 blah. And there is so much value to that. But on the flip side of it, sometimes I feel like it should just be like achievements, like it shouldn't just be because we're women. But I feel like because women had to struggle so much, like, I think you said something about like, why is it the women's sports teams are always like elite and like all pro? And I think it's because women are always trying to have to prove themselves constantly in so many scenarios. Like we're always trying to have, I don't know where I'm going with that, but we are always having to overachieve because so little is often expected of us. I think that's what I was trying to say. But yeah, I don't know about shedding, but I guess what Oscar is implying is that I take on a lot of things, but I feel like I have stepped back from a lot of areas in my life that was pulling me in different directions because I had my advocacy, I've had my Kung Fu school, we have our families, we have our kids of the temple, and just like so many dynamics that's happening, but they're all so equally important. But then I do realize like there's only so many hours in the day and we only have so much time left on this earth and we're headed back towards death again. But point being is like we do want to optimize our time here together, and which is why even though we're on a cruise, we are podcasting because it does bring us joy, because we do get to sit down and kind of philosophize. Is that a word?
I mean, English was not my first language.
and we do get some feedback actually on these MiOsc episodes, and mostly positive, some haters, but it's all good. Like, at least they're listening or just clicking on YouTube and giving us thumbs down because they're trolls. But anyways,
people who say negative things because they haven't done anything.
Correct. I was going to say, this leads us to one of our themes of today, which is a lot of people who are haters, a lot of people who talk down to people, a lot of people who are bullies, a lot of people who are negative, a lot of people who are overly critical and just want to hear the sound of their own voice, which is really ironic being that we are podcasting right now and it's just the sound of our voices. But like a lot of times it's because they haven't actually achieved or done anything great or don't do anything that's with good intentions. And so
I don't think I've ever gone on any place social media wise and said, let me write something negative about us.
Who has time for that?
It's like, one, who's got time for that? And two, if you've ever tried to do anything, you realize how hard it is.
Yeah.
I can sit back and we've watched TV shows or movies and goes, man, that was not good. And then you go, yeah, okay, but I'm not going to write about it that it sucked because...
Have you made a TV show?
It's really hard, man.
Well...
I jokingly talked about a performer. I was like, oh, okay, this performer's pretty good, right? And then I'm like, but the performer is out there doing it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it might not be the greatest thing for me, but props to this person for being out there and doing it and taking years to learn all these different skills. And so, yeah, anybody who's like hating, like out there just putting out stuff, that's a troll. I know that there's probably a lot of bots that are actually doing it, and a lot of adversaries of different countries like to see, okay, how can we incite more heat and more anger?
Yes.
And I don't know, I just don't want anything to do with it.
Agree. I mean, you know how we feel about social media anyway. Like, it's hard for us to like engage. But one thing that we did notice, like, we tried to support all the shows this week, and sometimes when we're on cruises, we just want to like literally sleep and nap and we miss stuff. But with my family, they really enjoy the cruises, the shows. It's one of like their favorite parts, right? So we definitely go, and it may not be like the songs we like or the, you know, type of show, but as a performer, as somebody who has been on stage, as someone who has done productions, I just always want to support live performers, artists, because it's not that it's a dying art, but like what you said, to get up there, to have the dedication, to put in the hard work, to put in the numbers, and then to be up there and put yourself out there, and then just, they're there to entertain us, right? And so if you don't like it, then the door's over there. You don't have to be negative about it. So I think that more than anything, it's important for us to be supportive of others, especially if you have a bit of empathy and like experience in that situation. You know, I always tell people, I'm like, hey, if you've been on our lion team, if you've been on our kung fu team, then you need to make sure that you are always respectful of anybody that gets up on stage. Like, things can be not so great. You just don't have to be rude about it, right? You just have to kind of like be respectful. So yeah.
Agreed.
If you,
like I said earlier, you look at two boxers on a stage, in a ring, fighting, and one boxer totally outclasses the other boxer, maybe knocks them out in the first round. Those two boxers have more in common with each other, the winner and the loser, than everyone else who's watching. Everyone else in the crowd and any millions of people who are watching.
But everybody watching has a say in like, hey, should a jab crossed here? Da, 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 da. Or like a sports fans, they're like yelling at the TV. Right. I'm like, are you out there throwing the ball? Right. So yeah, I get it. But we've all done it. We've all gotten carried away. We all get overheated. But I think it is good to kind of take that step back sometimes and look inside ourselves and go, hey, let them do them. They're the ones that put in the hard work. Okay. My last shout out, I forgot, is to my amazing former student, Brian, who takes care of me still by doing my nails. And they really match my outfit tonight. So shout out to Brian Boo.
Those nails
on point
are amazing. And look at me, I don't have nails, right? But those nails are dope.
Thank you. I do love this. Okay, we're going to wrap it up here because it's time to go to sleep, and it's been a long week for us on vacation. But thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to fill out that poll on who takes up more minutes. Probably me on this one, but I don't know. Tough competition. Anyway, thank you, Oscar.
Thanks.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.